Welcome to Just Liberty, where justice and liberty meet. I'm Bettina Krause, editor of Liberty Magazine, and together with my co-host, Alan Reinach, who is president of the Church State Council, we're trying to take back religious liberty from the political extremes. So, Alan, we have quite a program lined up today. So often we forget about the individuals, the people, the names that are behind some of the court cases that we discuss on this show. But every court case has an individual behind their legal drama. And, we're going to get to hear the story of someone who you have been closely associated with.
Indeed. And it has been a very long ordeal for Ron Hittle, and it may be over, but we're asking the Supreme Court that it not be over.
Well, let's get straight to that interview, Alan.
Well, today we have a really special show. It's about a case, a religious liberty case that's going to the Supreme Court. At least we've asked the Supreme Court to take it. We don't know if they will. And this is a very special case to me because I'm one of the attorneys. And we have with us today my partner, Wendy Musell, my partner in crime and litigation crime, that is, in litigating against the city of Stockton, California, on behalf of one of my very favorite clients ever, Ron. If you don't mind my embarrassing you, Ron Hittle is, a 25-year veteran of the Stockton Fire Department. He was serving as fire chief when he was fired for attending a leadership event because it was hosted at a church and sponsored by a religious organization. It's really a kind of a remarkable story. Now, I'm glad to know that Ron has landed on his feet, and it's been a long ordeal. The termination took place in what year, Ron?
2011.
13 years ago. And the case was filed in 2012. Well, Ron and Wendy, welcome to Just Liberty. We're delighted that you're here.
So Alan, of course, has an inside perspective on this case. I have an outside perspective, and I have mainly read about it in news reports. And I have to say, Ron, I have been absolutely fascinated by your tenacity. This has been such a long case. Can you take us right back to the very beginning? And, even before we get to the case, why don't you tell us why you became a firefighter in the first place? Because that's where this really starts, right?
That's correct. I don't think I'm that normal little kid that wanted to be a firefighter. I didn't know what I wanted to be, maybe a baseball player or a football player or something like that as I grew up. But I had a friend that mentioned to me something about working for a fire, taking a test at some point in time. And I loved the physical nature of it. I loved community service, that type of thing. And on a whim, I took a test for the Stockton Fire Department, which is really kind of an odd thing because most people take multiple tests to actually get the job. I took one test and I was hired within a couple years of taking the test. And the interesting thing, I was on road to be a teacher. I was in my master's program to be a special education teacher. And I literally abandoned that within 2 months of my master's to be done. And I jumped to the fire department, and it was a wonderful ride. I believe that God had put me in that position to serve the community. And I had many opportunities throughout the fire department to serve in different ranks, firefighter, EMT, battalion chief, captain, and served as a union president for many, many years, like 11 or 12 years as a union president. So I got to serve not only the community when I was on duty, I got a chance to serve the brothers and sisters of the fire department and representing them, and kind of laid my path for where I was going. And that's where it ended up. And eventually, I was appointed to be the fire chief at a very young age. And so it was an honor to serve in that position.
And so when you really date the start of the conflict with the city of Stockton, how did that begin?
Sure. I telling you, I'd made fire chief at a young age, at 43 years old. Usually people don't go aspire to be fire chief till after 50 years old. I was fortunate to be in that position. I served under a couple city managers and a city council during that time. Things were going fine for about the first 3.5 years being fire chief. Um, I couldn't have said anything but great things about that process and the ability for me to serve in that community. And then things started to go a little bad when the housing crisis happened, 2000, 8 and different things. That was right when one of the things, the Lehman Brothers and all that happened, and all municipalities struggled. I mean, businesses struggled during that time, and so there was budget issues, a lot of tension that was coming with that, and during that time, we had to cut a lot of things out of our budget, literally millions and millions of dollars out of our budget each year. Things were getting difficult, but it really wasn't a problem. My city managers were fine and they were supportive. And then the city, somebody retired, one of the city managers, and they brought in a gentleman by the name of Bob Dice. And Bob Dice was from a local county around here, kind of had a reputation of being a tough city manager. And I didn't think anything of it. Things were working fine with the past two city managers, and here he came, and for the most part, he had sat down with every department head. He made appointments to come and sit down with them and learn about the fire department, learn about myself, and a chance to learn about him. And so the day came where we had an hour scheduled meeting, and he sat down in my office, and we just started chit chatting, and everything seemed to be fine. And he asked me, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. And so this is where my struggle became. And so I just told him, first of all, I said, I'm a God honoring man. I put God first in my life. My family is second, and my job is third. But, I try to run the department as an integral man. And the whole time I'm talking to him, it went from this, cozy, nice conversation to this blank stare kind of, like, okay, what are we talking about? And then he interrupted me. He says, let's move on. And I thought, oh, okay. This kind of just stopped me in my tracks a little bit. But I thought, okay, it's the first time I've met him. I don't know much about him. And so we proceeded to talk a little bit about the fire department. And our meeting was over within about 15 minutes. It didn't go very long. He goes, I think I've heard enough. And he was out the door. And from that point on, I just never felt comfortable with that type of conversation with him. I didn't answer to him. I was assigned to a deputy city manager at the time, Lori Montez. And I had been working with her for the last year, and I'd known her for literally since high school. I'd known her for a long time, so I knew her very well. But on that end of it, she was now him. And within a few months, one day she asked me about I heard that you have, you're a Christian and you meet with your firefighters now and then, and talked about what I call a Christian coalition and click in the fire department that maybe there was some favoritism, and it really stopped me in my tracks. I didn't realize that, that she felt that way or anything. We'd really never had any conversations about faith in any way, but it was obvious to me at that point in time that there was something brewing not good on that end of it. And, as time went on, I didn't see it at the time, but I started to think more happening and behind the scenes about that. And she asked me this many times about it and asked me, and I just told her, I said, I am. I meet with a pastor every Tuesday morning before I cut to work. I stop at, sometimes the firefighters have a Bible study. I stop at those and see how the guys are doing. And they've invited me every time. I can't always make it.
If I can jump in, hearing you retell the story, I'm reminded of the Bible story about Daniel in the lion's den, because Daniel was serving in a high government position in the Persian government, and he was a foreigner, and they didn't like him, and they couldn't find fault with him except for his faith, and that's what they came after him for. And in your story, and of course I know the backstory more than what you're telling. Those who were jealous of your leadership and who wanted your job and wanted you out of there, wanted to advance, they couldn't find fault with you except they went after you because of your faith. That's how I see it.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. At the time, I didn't see that. To be very frankly honest about it, I didn't see that happen. I didn't see that coming. But now that as time went on, the rearview mirror is always very clear, and I know now that is the truth. And there were some blocks. But that said, I at one point, Lori Montez said, "Hey, maybe you should get some leadership training. Go take some classes and do some things," because I hadn't had a chance to really do much of that during the budget crisis and things. And so, okay, and we were in a budget crisis, and I was looking for something to go to. Everything was out of state, or would take a year to apply to get to the National Fire Academy. It was a lot of other options, but nothing immediate until I came across the Willow Creek Summit leadership seminar that I had heard so much about over the years. And I thought, well, wow, what an opportunity. And I was available to 4 tickets. So I took 3 of my people that worked under me, and we went to a conference for 3 days, or 2 days. And we're on duty the whole time. We would have responded if we needed to come back. It wasn't that far away, just about 40 minutes out of town. And it wasn't unusual for me to be out of town or to take leadership training or take any training, or any of my under subordinates to take any training. So I was surprised within a very short period of time. She started questioning me about that. She had heard that I had gone to something that through some anonymous letters that were sent and had been written to the city council, to the Stockton Record. And they were just very unfortunate. It was kind of an internal thing with people trying to get me out of my position as Alan then. Well, one thing led to another, and she asked me about going to that conference, and I said, yeah, I went. You asked me to go to a leadership conference, and I found it was fantastic. In fact, I had written a big synopsis of all the things I had learned from that conference, and presented that to her, given it to her, and it wasn't hiding it. It was on my calendar. It wasn't anything that I was concerned in any way about, and it really struck me when it was all said and done. I was under investigation, and they were en route to find something to have me removed from my position.
Well, one of the things that is so inconsistent, I'll say, about the county's or the city's actions is they would circulate invitations to first responders like the firefighters to go to events at churches, prayer meetings, blue masses, and, Christmas programs, mayor's prayer breakfasts, all kinds of religious events, overtly, religious events, and they'd encourage the city officials, the first responders that would be sent around the fire department. So it wasn't as though going to a religious event was something unusual, or there was a policy or something. Oh no, we have to maintain strict, separation between, the civic government and all the churches. It just wasn't that was not the culture of Stockton, was it?
That is correct. In fact, I numerous times as growing through the fire department, whether it's firefighter, captain, battalion chief, we were assigned to go to things, go to be a part of events that were at churches. It was never, ever an issue. That's why I was never concerned about going to what I went to. It was literally world-class leaders at that seminar. The funny thing is that many of those speakers that were at these conferences were speakers that the City Managers Association were hiring for their management programs and the training that they had. So there, was a nice mix of secular and religious speakers, and I learned great leadership principles at those events. And so Alan's right. It was the culture of how we did things in the fire department was never an issue. We brought Promise Keepers to Stockton twice, and the fire department on duty provided all the medical and security services along with the police department for both vets for 40,000 people 2 years in a row. So it was never was an issue in my mind to go to an event that was religious based.
It sounds like that when the termination came, it came completely out of the blue. It was unexpected. What was going through your mind when that happened? How were you kind of reconciling, all the events and making sense of that. And what were you concerned about? What were you worried about? What were you thinking?
Well, I think you worked really hard to be the fire chief and right in the organization to serve that community and that job. And when I saw that end coming, it was hard. I have to tell you, this is where you fall back on God and you just, give it to Him each day. And that was what I had to do. My family was, obviously important in this process. I had one child just leaving college and another one just behind her, ready to go, and all the expenses of all those kind of things. There was a lot in my brain going on, and then what was I going to do? And I knew if you get fired by a fire department, a municipality, it is very hard to go find another job in another municipality. It is not something you just jump and go find another job very quickly, and at least at the capacity as a fire chief. And so, I appreciate you asking the question, but it was a very difficult time, and it was almost unbelievable. And if it wasn't for a few of my close friends and my my religious buddies and just some different guys that I spent a lot of time with, it would have been real hard. My family and my wife were incredibly supportive through it, and it was great. And then I get a chance to meet somebody like Alan through the process, down the road a ways through that time. And Wendy, they have been phenomenal. I mean, the support that they have given us, my family has been, and without words, I could say. So it was a difficult time, but we're fine. We made it through. We landed on our feet. So thank you for asking.
Well, I want to switch gears here, and by way of transition, Ron, I praise God that where you finally landed was as the principal of a very large Christian school in the neighboring town of Lodi, California, and that, no, you were not able to continue providing leadership within the city of Stockton and the fire department, the city government there, but you provided leadership within the Christian community for so many families, for so many children, and were such a blessing. And I know God led you, but meanwhile the city of Stockton went through a municipal bankruptcy. By the reports I've had, it was a very poorly managed bankruptcy that was not did not really help the city very much, and that delayed your case. Was kind of tied up, and by the time the bankruptcy was over, and by the time the judge ruled on a motion to dismiss, the attorney that you had initially hired was retiring, and he reached out to a local, a well-known firm in Oakland, friends of Wendy's and mine. They referred you to me because we do the religion cases, and I quickly reached out to my friend and colleague Wendy Musell, because I knew that your case was going to need more firepower than our office could provide by itself. And Wendy, let's turn to you. What were your thoughts when you first got into this case?
Well, when I first saw the facts of this case, I thought that there was direct evidence of discrimination. The city had indicated that they fired Ron because they perceived that he was engaging in religious conduct or a religious nature of the leadership training. I saw this as direct evidence of discrimination, just as if there had been discriminatory comments based on race. Here there was discriminatory comments based on religion, and I thought it was an extremely strong case. I also thought that Ron was an incredibly deserving human being. He's kind, he's thoughtful, he served his community. I've met him repeatedly, and each time I was more impressed by the service that he's provided and the heart that he provided to his job. And that the perceptions that the city had based on negative stereotyping and their own discriminatory animus, that simply because a person is religious, simply because a person is Christian,
that has to mean that Ron could not be fair and non-discriminatory towards others. And I found that idea personally offensive, and that he was being treated differently very clearly to me based on his religion. And I represent people, all types of discrimination cases. I represent people, based on race, national origin, the LGBTQ community. I bring all of those cases and religion cases, um, believing that the separation of church and state is extraordinarily important and important for all of our rights, and that all of those that are a benefit from Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and non-discrimination and inequality in employment, that we each deserve that. And I thought that Ron deserved that, and that he was treated differently and worse very, very clearly based on his religion. In fact, it was in writing. They said, we're firing you in essence because of your religion. And I thought that was wrong. I think it's wrong today. And I'm hopeful the Supreme Court sees it the exact same way, that just as if an employer said, we're firing you because of your race, we're firing you because of your sexual orientation, same is true of religion. If you're firing an individual because of their religion and they have not engaged in discriminatory conduct, which Ron did not, he deserved to keep his job. And unfortunately, I think he was a victim of stereotyping and discriminatory animus. And I'm very hopeful that the Supreme Court will see it as clearly as I think the evidence demonstrates.
So Wendy, help the non-lawyer listeners who are looking at this case, who are hearing Ron talk, who are hearing you talk. They see that, this seems like such an egregious case of religious discrimination in the workplace. Right. Help the non-lawyers understand how this case could have proceeded to where it is now, with the court not agreeing with that assessment.
So part of what we're addressing is the standards that are used in a motion called a motion for summary judgment. And this is usually brought by employers where they try to throw out the case, to say that there are no disputes of fact. We don't have disagreements about what happened, and that because of that, looking at these facts, can you bring your case to a jury? It's a legal construct under the law, and it's often brought in discrimination cases. So that happened in this case after we'd already taken the depositions of many witnesses, already received many documents. So that means we had testimony of witnesses that said what they thought happened. And we saw documents indicating, in contemporaneous documents, about why the decisions were made. And again, the contemporaneous documents indicated that religion was a reason for the termination. So the court, in the Northern District, which is the federal court where this case is held, in any event,
this one was in the Eastern District, Wendy.
We'll have to fix that. In the Eastern,
no, that's okay. Yeah.
They decided, unfortunately, we think they misapplied the law. So there's a burden shifting analysis called the McDonnell-Douglas standard, where they shift the burdens between the plaintiff and the defendant. What we're trying to say to the Supreme Court is, where there is evidence of discrimination, which there is here in writing, and there's testimony from the decision makers where they said to Ron, comments indicating he's part of a Christian coalition that had no basis in fact, made other derogatory comments about his faith, as well as the termination document says very explicitly it was because of his religion. We're saying that that's direct evidence of discrimination. They said it just plain as day, that his religion was one of the reasons they decided to fire him. And when you have that kind of evidence, you should be able to reach a jury. The judge shouldn't throw out your case, but that we should honor our constitutional right to a jury trial that is enshrined in our U.S. Constitution. so that Ron can have his day in court, and so can the city. If a jury agrees with the city, so be it. But we feel that there's very strong evidence and that this judge created rule of this burden shifting McDonnell Douglas is not consistent with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and has the effect of making sure that meritorious cases like Ron's never reach a jury. And that's just contrary to law, and we think contrary to the meaning of the civil rights statute in the Constitution.
So, Wendy, the context of Ron's case, of course, is a religious freedom case. And that gives us some hope because the justices on the Supreme Court have always been, very interested in religious freedom cases. But the legal test that we're challenging would impact all discrimination cases and really thousands and thousands of workers, wouldn't it?
That's exactly right. It would. And so this is not a test that's solely related to religious discrimination cases. It's not solely related to race discrimination cases, but it covers all discrimination cases. So based on race, national origin, age, for example, sexual orientation, all of the cases would benefit. So if an employer is engaging in discriminatory conduct, which is unlawful under federal law, those cases will have the ability to be heard by a jury, or more likely to be heard by a jury. And I think that Ron's case is a perfect example where you have direct evidence. They said it exactly what they thought. He was being fired because of his religion. And so that case is a case that absolutely deserves to reach a jury. And this could be the same if you had a race case. It could be the same if you had a case based on sexual orientation, national origin. Here, it has to do with religion. And I think, unfortunately, that's part of why I think that Ron's case didn't get a fair shake, where the discriminatory comments weren't understood, even though they were very explicit, as discriminatory. And so we're hoping that the Supreme Court is able to more fairly evaluate that.
Wendy, Ron, thank you so much. It's been a great interview, and we are waiting, I guess, with bated breath to see what happens to this cert petition.
Thank you. And thanks especially to Ron and Alan. It's been such a pleasure to be a part of this case. It's so meritorious, and I can't wait for the day where we can hopefully celebrate your ultimate win.
This has been Just Liberty, where justice and liberty meet. I'm Alan Reinach with Bettina Krause. Until next time, remember, eternal vigilance really is the price of liberty.